Druid magic, there's Anglo-Saxon magic, there's the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which some people trace back to Germany, but I think probably a more convincing argument that it can be traced back to the reading room of the British Museum. That's a matter of debate. You have Freemasonry. There's an argument about whether it initially developed in Scotland or England. Very good arguments for both, but probably England, who knows. And you have the current of thelemic magic, developed by a man called Aleister Crowley, the infamous magician, who some believe was a genius and others believe was a rogue. And you have the kind of magic developed by Dion Fortune, kind of the Western mystery tradition, the magic that Dion Fortune developed, and which many teachers have worked with since, which represents a very lively and developing current of magical practice today. So you have these 7 kinds of magic and you have chaos magic as well, which was perhaps the most recent form of magic that developed out of chaos physics and the sort of modern cosmological theories. So it's a big, broad picture, but nevertheless, there's something about seeing things in perspective that helps us to understand the individual approach. And there's Wicca as well, I knew I'd forgotten, there's Wicca as well, which again, depending upon your historical approach, you will see is developing in the mid-20th century, thanks to Gerald Gardner and various other people, or as having developed earlier, depending on your point of view. So I've presented a picture of how the book has tried to work with magic and present the story of English magic. So maybe now would be the time for a few moments of heart music, which will allow that to settle, and allow me to think of what would be the best thing to say next. Question is this: with the rise of rationalism and the development of science, the way science separated itself from magic, because to begin with, magic and science were one. The early magicians were scientists, the alchemists were the first chemists, and so on. Gradually it separated itself from its magical roots. Now, with the advent of rationalism, of science, of the Enlightenment, you would think that the amount of magical activity in this country and around the world would diminish, but it hasn't. It's done the opposite. It's actually increased. So the question is this a manifestation of humanity's inherent irrationality and the power of superstition to control it? Or is something deeper going on? Is magic actually a manifestation of something very important in the human soul that requires expression, and therefore as we become more sophisticated in our understanding, we are actually able to deepen our understanding of it. So, and I certainly favour that latter approach, and I think one of the really interesting things that has happened in the last 50 years or so has been with the advent of psychology, the science of psychology, the study of psychology, the application of a psychological understanding to the practice of magic, and therefore understanding more about what is going on, how the mind works, and why we're so thrilled and fascinated by magic, and why it could possibly work too. And one of the ways of understanding that is to understand the concept of archetypes, of figures who hold a certain kind of power in our imagination and our psyches that can act as channels for something more to come into our lives, and as channels for us to develop our abilities. If you look at and the reason I think why the magician is such a powerful archetype is because she or he operates in 5 realms that cover almost the entire range of human experience. The magician works in the realm of religion, in the realm of science, the realm of medicine, politics, and the arts. So what do I mean by this? If you think of the role of the magician, in the early days, tribal society, the fear of being attacked, the risks of crop failure, of your cattle or your livestock being stolen, of them becoming ill and dying, huge amounts of risks involved in the enterprise of keeping the tribe alive and well. There would be one person who seemed to have unusual abilities and who seemed to be able to connect with the spirits and to know more. So there would be the ruler, there would be the sort of alpha male perhaps, who would be the strongest warrior, who would defend the pack, who would defend the tribe. But there would be the oddball, the unusual, the psychic, who would get intimations and who would advise the warrior. So when the warrior chieftain, or the warrioress chieftain would say, you know, should we attack them because they attacked us last week? Should we go back, or are they kill us? I don't know. And the seer would be in communion with the spirits and would perhaps work some way of divination to determine it. The clearest example would be Boudica and her druid. And in the story of when she was appealing to the goddess Andraste, the goddess of victory, she had her druid, and they were about to sweep down, I think it was Colchester or perhaps St Albans, Verulamium, and she wanted to know whether she was going to be successful or not. The druid released a hair out of his cloak, and if it went to the left, they'd have victory, if it went to the right, they'd fail, and the hair rushed to the left, and they all cheered, hurrah, and proceeded to massacre him and achieve victory. So here you have, straight away, you have an example of the magician who is operating in the religious realm,